Please welcome Tiffany.
Thank you, Amy, for the wonderful introduction. And yes, in the world of health and safety, H&S or EH&S, we certainly love to use our acronyms. So I will certainly do my best to address those and discuss those, and so give you some foundation as to what those mean, because quite frankly, more often in the health and safety world you just hear those acronyms over the full definition of what that means. So I will explain them as I go, and certainly at the end I'm free to answer any questions that you may have or further discussion as to the topic.
You're on your first screen now. I'll just advance you as you get going.
Exactly. Perfect, Brian. I can see it as you advance, so that's ideal.
Okay.
So safety as a system, you may have heard about, and some of you may hopefully actively using safety management systems or SMS. What a lot of individuals don't realize is that the core of safety management systems are these JHAs and RCAs, job hazard analysis and root cause analysis. Oftentimes what I've seen in my work in EH&S, in my auditing world, is that these two things, job hazard analysis and root cause analysis, are utilized outside of the safety management systems themselves. They're standalone processes, when in reality, they really are the core and the body of a true safety management system. And without those two pieces, you do not have a solid foundation within your safety management system, which, as many of you may know, starts with a safety policy, which is a commitment to health and safety. And in the middle of that stands your safety risk management, which is led by your JHA process analysis, and safety assurance, making sure that that job hazard analysis is understood and stands up through the process of your safety management system, and certainly ends with safety promotion, utilizing those tools to help you and others better understand the concept of a safety management system. So Amy helped introduce me a little bit, which I truly appreciate. It's interesting when we do these meetings virtually, because certainly you get a different perspective, a different idea of who your presenters are. It's more, I think, more difficult to get a sense of that when we meet virtually. So I just wanted to give you a little background into who I am, as I put in the slide. Who is your presenter and why should I listen to this woman is kind of what I like to say. So to let you know, my background in health and safety is fairly broad. Currently, I am the Alliance Director of Compliance for Click Safety. I come to you with over 15 years in the world of EHS, environmental health and safety compliance management. I certainly have done quite a bit of auditing in the world of EH&S, and that includes systems like ISO 14001, 45001, and those are really system-based programs. So I have done my fair share of auditing safety management systems themselves. I have worked on compliance projects in 38 states and 8 countries, so I'm certainly familiar with the requirements in the United States as far as OSHA goes, as well as programs like ANSI. I had been elected to be an ASSP community influencer, and in addition to that, I sit on the ISET Council for Standards Development. So to sum that all up, I have done my fair share of work in the world of safety management systems, and for that reason, I certainly feel comfortable sharing my knowledge with you on this topic. So facilities management, definitely a broad a broad topic, and you are responsible in the world of facilities management and property management for a number of critical areas of concern. I've highlighted just a couple here, but certainly in your day-to-day operations, there's more areas of concern that fall under your umbrella, so to speak. Some of the critical areas of concern that you deal with on a day-to-day basis are issues like fire safety, asbestos and dangerous chemical management, electrical safety, working at heights. Those are some of the more common critical areas of concern that fall under the facilities management umbrella. And with that, it's your role to understand the type of compliance training that's necessary and how to best provide that. Example, working at heights really can't be done compliantly in terms of OSHA standards without that required training. In facilities management, what I find interesting is there is a lot that falls under your role. So you're relied heavily on efficiency and expertise in those areas of concerns that we were just talking about. So the responsibility of facility management and property management is vast. It's broad, and you're responsible for a lot in the world of EHS management. And for that reason, safety management systems really work to streamline that level of efficiency and give you a process that controls and manages those critical areas of concern. So job hazard analysis, let's dive right into that. As I said earlier, job hazard analysis and root cause analysis are the core, they're the body of an overall safety management system that are led by a top level safety policy and end truly with the continued promotion of working safety in accordance with the safety management system that you operate. So the job hazard analysis is a tool that is used to break down tasks and assign severity to those tasks. This is actually what many don't know is part of the OSHA duty to comply. And what that means is OSHA regulations require a written certified hazard assessment. So we talk about the job hazard analysis and the role of that. It is actually an OSHA requirement to go through the process of identifying hazards in the workplace. So the JHA process is a tool to break down those tasks and assign severity to those. It can also be used as a training tool for job safety. It really is designed to guide an efficient process to understanding the hazards of your workplace. It utilizes a standard approach. Often you see job hazard analysis in a formal document. There isn't one assigned document. Certainly operations use a number of forms and programs as to how to conduct a job hazard analysis. But what's important and what I like to remind people of is that there's really OSHA has developed what's called the hierarchy of controls, and you may have heard of that in your day-to-day operations. It's the hierarchy of controls that are used to guide you through that job hazard analysis process. And those are things like engineering controls, administrative controls, and personal protective equipment, in that order. So when you're utilizing a job hazard analysis, what you're doing is identifying a particular hazard on the job, such as working with hazardous chemicals, such as asbestos, for example. Your engineering controls would be things to isolate, eliminate, or substitute those asbestos, substitute those hazards. So engineering controls, you want to isolate the problem. If you can't get rid of the asbestos that you encounter, you'd want to isolate it. You'd want to put in systems like HVAC, filtration systems that lessen the hazard associated with that work. Next level, if you find that you can't isolate the problem, there's no way to do it, those individuals, your workers, are going to come into contact with asbestos, you would step to the next level and rely on administrative controls. How can we alter the way those individuals work to allow them to more safely work around that chemical, that item, such as, again, asbestos? If you're not able to do that, you can't change the work routine or the work habits of those individuals, and you find we're still going to be put in a position where the workers are going to encounter asbestos, you then move to that final piece of the hierarchy of controls, which is personal protective equipment. You find ways to protect that worker from exposure. So job hazard analysis walks you through ways to lessen the severity of the work that the individual is doing that would put them in harm's way. On the opposite end of job hazard analysis comes root cause analysis, another core piece and the body of a strong safety management system. Once you've identified those hierarchies of controls and ways that you can lessen the risk and the hazard, you want to make sure that you're using those elimination techniques, those personal protective equipment requirements, so that these incidents, should they occur, should you have an individual that does become exposed and has a higher level of exposure than is allowed by regulation and becomes an incident or failure of the safety management system, the root cause analysis is going to walk you through those steps and tell you, well, let's look back and determine how this happened. Why did this happen? And then allows you to put in processes and procedures to ensure that that type of exposure would never happen again. So it avoids the root cause analysis, if done correctly and following the processes, it avoids those putting out the fires, that type of routine, which I often see, where it starts with the person is not following, or you have a situation where procedures aren't being followed. You have a high level of exposure. I'm going to continue to use the asbestos example because it's the easiest one to use through this presentation. You avoid that panic mode. You avoid that, oh my gosh, that individual has been exposed at a higher level. This becomes a recordable incident. Now we just need to fix it. Those job hazard analysis and these root cause analysis forms a system to tell you where that failure occurred. Why was that individual exposed? The job hazard analysis may tell you that you didn't properly identify that hazard or rank it at a specific level of severity. And the root cause analysis will tell you which part of the process failed and why did this incident, recordable incident, occur. Often used, again, by facilities and property management as an efficiency. You've got enough to do that it's very difficult to constantly be running around, quote unquote, to put out these fires. This is designed to be a process where if it is maintained at a strong level using these foundations, you have a system for understanding why this incident happened and why the process failed, so that you can move forward in a way to prevent it from occurring again. Failures often cascade into other failures. So without a strong system, there is no way to prevent incidents and accidents from occurring again, because you don't understand why they occurred to begin with. So root cause analysis, RCA, extends beyond that simple troubleshooting. Let's think about real quick why this happened. Oh, it's because this worker decided they didn't want to wear their personal protective equipment. Well, let's do a root cause analysis and back up the process and understand, well, why didn't you want to wear that personal protective equipment? What part of our procedure implementation training is failing that this incident occurred? So job hazard analysis and root cause analysis, as I mentioned in the earlier part of the presentation, are not standalone tools. And I can't stress enough, just based on my experience, how often I see that. In terms of OSHA regulations, 1910-132 is the general industry requirement for personal protective equipment. If you were to be on the construction side, that is mimicked by 1926.26. Those are the personal protective equipment requirements. And within those regulations, that is where it states the duty to comply. That is where OSHA says you have to have this written certified hazard assessment. That's your job hazard analysis. And to me, what I've found in auditing safety management systems and auditing compliance is, because this type of or this requirement is set alone in one single regulation, it's not seen as a part of an entire safety management system. Job hazard analysis really is the start. It's the beginning of the foundation of a strong safety management system. You're looking at your hazards. You're ranking them in terms of severity, so you know where your focus needs to be in order of severity. Root cause analysis is the end of that safety management structure. That is where you've implemented a process and a procedure for understanding why these incidents may have occurred. And really, that is your foundation. There's no way, in my opinion, to really truly understand why an incident occurred without having a process that understands and dictates how it started. That truly means to me, it's not understood what the hazard truly is. And you certainly can't be able to prevent that from happening again without understanding that. So without a job hazard analysis, a root cause analysis really makes no sense. There's no beginning and there's no end to a safety management system. They are not standalone requirements. They truly are the body of a strong safety management system. As we've talked about, the safety management system relies on continuous improvement. You have those pieces that are so important to create that foundation, but it relies to continue to ensure that your safety management system is strong. It is something that requires continuous improvement to reduce hazards and ultimately prevent those hazards from occurring again. That is why your JHAs and your RCAs work together to create a safe work environment, to create a roadmap for regulatory compliance. Part of that job hazard analysis process is to not only understand those hazards, but really take a focus on, are you complying with those hazards? What needs to be done to lessen the severity of those hazards? So you're looking at each hazard, and within that, you will find as you walk through the process, are we complying with that? So we've got a working at heights. For example, that's a hazard. That would be generally a higher level of severity based on your OSHA top 10s, the higher levels of incidents and illnesses every year. That continues to be at the top. So if you're working in a situation where your workers are exposed to working from heights, that likely is going to be your highest or higher area of concern as you walk through the JHA process. And when you're doing that, and as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of ways that a JHA can be done. There's a number of forms that can be used that are out there. OSHA has some fantastic guides that can be used to walk you through the process, but it's important to know that not only is this part of the foundation of your overall safety management system, it is a requirement. There's a duty to comply. OSHA says you have to do what the regulation will say is you have to do a risk assessment. It has to be a written document. It has to be certified by an individual who performed that activity. So as you walk through the process, which OSHA says you have to do, you're identifying your hazards and then moving forward to understand how can we prevent those hazards? How can we lessen the severity? If we can't eliminate the hazard, how do we lessen the severity of that hazard? Elimination of hazards, that's another type that's another way that JHAs can help you. Part of the very top hierarchy of controls. Generally, you see what I've talked about a little earlier in the presentation. When you talk about hierarchies of control, what you usually see are the three that I listed, those engineering controls. How can we find a way that the worker's not exposed to that hazard? A good example of that in talking about working at heights would be installing railings, installing anchor points that prevent those individuals from approaching an area where they could encounter a fall. Administrative controls, creating methods so that individual is not exposed to the hazard in their work routine. So you can't engineer out the hazard. That individual still needs to approach a working edge, but how can you put in controls so that there are processes and procedures that that individual has been trained on to lessen the severity and the risk of falling in this example. So engineering controls, administrative controls, finally the use of personal protective equipment. What I have seen that I think is interesting is a lot of individuals and programs will jump immediately to personal protective equipment. So you've got workers that are encountering asbestos, dangerous chemicals, and their first thought process is, we're going to put them in respirators. Certainly you may get to a point where respirators are required, but the job hazard analysis process backs you up those two levels. Is there a way that we can eliminate exposure to the asbestos? Can we substitute a different type of material so that there is no exposure to that? Can we incorporate shift work procedures so the individual is not exposed for the length of time, so that the type of personal protective equipment that workers are often immediately put in maybe isn't required? I've always seen that those first two steps are often overlooked. And that, again, I know is part of the job hazard analysis, and I think is why OSHA has continued to mandate that these risk assessments, these job hazard analysis are required. And then finally, at the end of that, you've done the job hazard analysis, you understand the risk, you've determined if you can eliminate it, you've determined if you can engineer them out. Can you provide a level of administrative controls to lessen the severity or to help that individual avoid the risk. And when you can't do that, you then put the individual in personal protective equipment, and you find, well, we still have incidents and accidents related to this exposure, and we've done the job hazard analysis. Why is this continuing? Why are these incidents, injuries, illnesses why do they continue to happen? That is when you step in with a root cause analysis and walk again through the processes that you have in place to determine, why is this continuing to happen? Where is our safety management failing that we are continuing to see incidents and injuries? Together, without those two processes working together, there is no foundation for a strong safety management system. They are not standalone requirements because, for example, it says you have to do it in the personal protective equipment regulation. They really are, those two components are part of the foundation of that entire safety management system, which is built around commitment, leadership commitment to a safety policy, understanding your risks, creating a roadmap for eliminating those risks, keep them from occurring repeatedly, and continuing to provide an environment where safety is promoted across the board. So the ultimate goal here of a safety management system and utilizing job hazard analysis and root cause analysis as part of that safety management is to stop putting out those unnecessary fires. There's enough of them in a day-to-day operation that having injury, illnesses, accidents continuing to occur is something that is certainly not only bad for the individual, but it's something that with a strong safety management system, you won't have to do. You understand the hazards, and should they continue to occur because you're not properly using the hierarchy of controls and understanding that hazard, you can then look at those injuries and illnesses in depth and continue to provide processes that keep them from occurring again. So they're not standalone items. They must work together, and without them working together, without them being part of the entire system, the safety management system often fails. And then just a bonus tip, given the current environment that we're living in, all of us are living in now, the job hazard analysis exercise can also be a valuable tool, not only in creating a safety management system, but it can also be used in other ways. A good example is through the development and auditing of a workplace pandemic exposure plan, which I think is being brought to light, obviously now, more than ever. The last time OSHA really took a strong look and a strong stand on this type of environmental impact to individuals is back in the influenza pandemic. Since then, there's been guidance and best management practices, recommendations, but until now, OSHA's really not focused on operations having a pandemic exposure plan, which, similar to your safety management system, must include an item like a job hazard analysis. You can work through by creating a pandemic exposure plan. The first step in that would be not only to create a policy surrounding that, but to effectively conduct the job hazard analysis exercise to understand where that risk lies in the particular type of work that you perform. questions, comments, discussion points? Is there an acronym that I didn't properly explain? Again, in the world of health and safety, we love to use our acronyms, and in a common conversation that can often get confusing, even for individuals like me that have been in the world of health and safety for many years. I know that it's heavily focused around those acronyms. That is what I had for you today. Certainly, I wish everybody a safe and healthy day as we continue to navigate through our current environment. But certainly, I would be happy to answer any questions or discuss any comments, whether it's right now or Brian's information is in this last slide. So is mine. If a question comes up after the fact, or there's a portion of what we discussed that you would like more in depth, if I can and tell you more about the regulations that are involved in the job hazard analysis and what that written certification means, I'm certainly open and more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Tiffany. Does anybody have any questions for Tiffany or Brian? Or maybe you're already implementing these things in your company. Maybe you have something to share that you're already doing. We'd love to hear from you. We have a little bit more time in this call now. And Tiffany, how would you recommend somebody get started? Like if they don't have anything right now, maybe they just have a verbal process.
Sure, it's really a safety management system is a group exercise, and not only in the beginning and creating one, but maintaining one. So my recommendation, if you find that you don't have a management system in place, is to sit down with key leaders and key roles in your particular workplace and brainstorm, for a lack of a better term, brainstorm where you would see a safety program going. What would you like your environmental health and safety program to look like? And maybe that's something as not simple, but something as simple as saying, we have a lot of incidents and accidents from working from heights. How do we lessen that? How do we avoid that? You want to create a safety management system policy that explains we are all committed to this. Obviously, in all workplaces, you're committed to safe and healthy employees, not having incidents and accidents. So the first part of a safety management system is to come up with a policy as a whole.
Do you have any points to talk about with vendors and contractors that come in and work on a facility? I am the facility supervisor at the Kaufman Center for the Performing Arts, and not only do we hire full-time contracted staff to work there every day, but we also have other vendors and contractors coming in. Is there anything that we need to know about that?
Sure. I would say when you have those individuals that are contracted, that don't work for you day to day, that are vendors that come in and out, it's important as part of that initial process to vet the experience that not only they have, but the company has. They should have their own safety management system, and it's okay to ask those questions. Let me see your training. What type of personal protective equipment are you using, and do you have the commitment to follow our safety management system, our commitment to safety, our processes and procedures? It's okay to ask those questions. And so when I think you have contracted employees that work full-time at your facility but aren't employed by you, they should have an understanding of what is expected of your facility. When you have those vendors that go in and out and work part-time or based on need in your facility, it's important to vet their company. What type of safety management system do they have? And it's okay to ask those questions. It's okay to look at their accident and injury history. It's okay to ask to see their safety training to ensure that not only do they have those things to be compliant, but then you know they're coming from a company that also has that commitment to health and safety.
Great. Julie, are you listening? I'm going to call on you.
Yes, I'm listening.
Hi, Julie. So Julie
Hi.
Robinson is the facility manager at H&R Block. And Julie, do you have anything that you can speak to about what H&R Block is doing or what they have in place, or, you know, your experience? And
Well, we have an engineering team of 6 gentlemen, and they regularly attend training, OSHA trainings. We try to find new trainings for them regularly throughout the year for them to attend, because we've got some that are senior level engineers and some that are junior level engineers, and we want to make sure that everybody's up to speed with all the current training that is out there and new guidelines. So that's one of the things that I task my chief engineer with, is developing a training plan for the team every year to keep them up to date.
great. And how many engineers did you say you had?
We have 6.
Okay.
But right now 3 of them are stuck at home.
Yeah. And what is your square footage, Julie?
We've got 585,000 square feet in the building, but the overall property with the garage is closer to 900,000 square feet.
Wow. Great. Thank you. Thanks for your input.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions or comments or stories? Stories are fun. So I believe that's all we have for today. It's a short meeting, and you know, maybe you can take some extra time to go out and spend some time outside, take a break, read a book. That's all I have, and just be on the lookout for our next event, and just stay connected. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you and see what you're doing and how you're doing. So thank you, Tiffany and Brian and Rose and IFMA Kansas City and guests who have attended today. So
thank you.
that's all I have.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.